And I'd love to take any questions you have for a while, and then I'll be glad to sign books. Yes, sir. And feel free to introduce yourself if you're so inclined.
Well, I'll just toss out a couple of comments and pick among them to respond to. First of all, thank you. I found your presentation very instructive in a very useful way, especially the way you were analyzing some recent things going on inside the Beltway where it still snows. You mentioned Dennis Blair and it's lawful to assassinate Americans, according to him, abroad. According to Bruce Fine, who appeared here the other day with Ralph Nader, it is already lawful, according to some things that happened during the Bush years, for the president to authorize the assassination of Americans inside the United States. I don't know if you care to comment on that. One thing that another excuse that people in Congress use is, and we've encountered this, some of the people here working on Capuano have found that Capuano, and a similar thing happens in Louisiana, for example, on hurricane disaster relief. It's rolled into legislation about funding the wars, so that for Capuano, he had voted against appropriations for the war on one occasion, but then on a subsequent occasion said that he voted for it because it had something important to him in it about Darfur, regardless of what anybody thinks about Darfur. When we begin to think about how to challenge this environment, and we think about sort of inside-outside strategies, we think about the role of somebody like Kucinich, with whom you've worked. Kucinich, to me, is an example in his own way of the same kinds of problems, where Kucinich in 2004 led this challenge, and then on the eve of the Democratic Party National Convention here in Boston, told a room full of supporters he was just going to roll up his campaign and really not demand anything of John Kerry. So in the light of that kind of experience, even from the best of the progressives, where else do we need to move in this political landscape and continue to look for ways to be effective? And I think you've already given some good examples. But.
Well, that's at least 4 very good points, and I'll try not to go on all night so that some other people can ask some questions if they want to, and then I can sign books. But it is arguably legal, although under other statutes and treaties and international law illegal, for the president to declare someone an enemy, or an enemy combatant was the phrase that the Bush gang used, and to declare that we are at war, and the war is everywhere. The battlefield is everywhere. The battlefield includes this room. And certainly John Yoo's interpretation of law is that during wartime, and it is always wartime, and the war is everywhere, a president's powers are absolutely unlimited. Now, there are many people still who will argue with that, but who will go along with the idea that what was done to someone like Jose Padilla was legal. Now, there's who's one of the Americans who've been abused, and it's interesting that a civil court has approved going forward with a suit through which Padilla is suing John Yoo for damages. John Yoo, responsible for crimes for which he's not been indicted, may be found liable for damages from a torture victim. The lipstick question, I think of the lipstick on a pig as what they do when they take these war bills and they put something nice in with them in the same vote, and then everybody who wants an excuse for voting for the war bill says, oh, well, I had to because of this other thing, when they all know damn well that if they voted no and blocked the bill, they'd separate the two things and pass the nice thing that's guaranteed to pass and not pass the war bill. It's an excuse. It's always an excuse. It's an absolutely useless excuse in every instance. What I like is when they put something ugly, whatever the opposite of lipstick is, harsh winds or something in the bill, because then you know, last June, all the Republicans committed treason. Remember that, you know, for years, it would be treasonous to vote against a war bill. They all voted against the war bill because they had put the IMF thing in there with it, right? And you had 51 Democrats vote no for show, and then you only needed 40 Democrats to vote no on that second go-around to actually kill the thing. And it was a big fight. You know, and the White House and the cabinet and the military, you know, spent over a week doing nothing else but bribing and threatening Congress members. And we held on to 31 and we needed 39, you know, but they are talking now about moving Gitmo from Cuba to Illinois in the war funding bill. And if they do something that stupid, again, and I wouldn't put it past them, you know, all the Republicans will vote no. And then again, we'll only need 40 Democrats, right? And we've got 15, 20 swearing they'll vote no matter what. We've got well over 40 who should, just given the invalidity of the excuses they used in June, oh, I'm doing it because it's the last one, you know. And then the late John Murtha announces the next day that it wasn't the last one, you know, as if you're killing children. I'm going to kill one more kid because it's the last one. You know, what kind of argument? Or I'm going to do it just this time to support my president. You know, Jan Schakowsky votes against war money for years, and then, oh, I'm going to vote for war money now to support my president. You know, that you know, that kind of thing isn't going to last that long, and the momentum is building, and the activism is coming back, and the pressure is going to be there, so that we can get at least 40 to vote no. And if we have to get to 218, we'll get to 218. But we have to pursue that. Dennis Kucinich went back to Cleveland to run for Congress because if he hadn't, he wouldn't be in Congress. He stayed in the Democratic Party because if he didn't, he wouldn't be in Congress. The most of what we think of as the best members of Congress don't do anything useful. They just talk better than the less good members of Congress. Kucinich is the most outstanding exception to that, in that he often actually does do useful things. God knows that the Republican and Democratic parties don't represent us. The you know, gut reaction is, well, then we need a different party that would represent us. But of course we have a system of winner-take-all in districts and of a president elected separately from a legislature that very strongly encourages two parties or no parties. That's the option, is no parties, that we had for the first dozen years of this country and got along very fine, thank you, without parties. In any case, we need to get out the money. We need to get a decent communication system. We need verifiable elections. We need access to get your name on a ballot and into debates and so forth. We need all the reforms that would make a third party possible, that would also make independent candidates possible, that would also reform the existing parties. You know, what we need more than anything is independent activism. Activist groups that are not subservient to the existing parties. And you know, that could include third parties, but it doesn't have to. Let's try to go to some other people. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Well, I just wanted to say I was very moved by your closing remarks before you opened us up to questions. And so kind of going back to that a little bit, talking about the courage of JFK to go against, or to begin to turn against the military-industrial complex. And asking that kind of courage from our leaders. I guess my question for all of us is like, where's our courage? Where is our willingness to stop funding the war, for instance? We do have choices. We make choices every year. For the last 10 years, I've been a war tax resistor, and you know, for me, it's a point of conscience. I don't know strategically if it's something that's really viable to turn the tide. But just taking it back to the idea of the courage and asking our leaders to stand up and be courageous and possibly, have very serious threats to their lives, that what are we asking of ourselves, I guess, is where I'm taking it to. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I need to add anything to that. If anyone couldn't hear, she's proposing that we find as much courage as we're asking of elected officials. And thankfully there is a lot more of it on display than we know about. It doesn't make it into television or newspapers. When the president accepted his Peace Prize and said, there are many people more deserving, some known and unknown, I said, you're damn right, I could name thousands of them. I would name Carlos, who goes up against thugs every time I hear from him. He's been attacked by war supporters. People have given up their family lives, spent their pensions, sacrificed their health. People are resisting paying their taxes, as Mr. Thoreau did not far from here. People are doing the right thing all across the country and winning victories at the local and state levels and shutting down recruitment centers and killing Muslim theme parks in shopping malls and educating the public to an unprecedented extent about war and about the lies that took us into Iraq, which is the only reason we're not in Iran yet. And so, you keep doing what you're doing and telling people you're doing it, and that's what gets them to do it. People follow examples, not arguments. I can't argue anybody into doing more, but if people look around at the examples, they will. And as a nation, we have before many times. Yeah.
What could you suggest that you could do with your visits to your congressman that might make some kind of a dent?
Go to a website I have called defundwar.org, just to stick with this topic of war funding and shifting the funding to useful things, and look at all the documentation you can bring to your congressman on what money has been wasted from your district on the wars, what money has been wasted on weapons factories and military contracts in your district, how many jobs and better jobs could be produced with that money spent in other ways, polling of where the people in the district stand. And don't bring just peace activists. Bring people who are out of work, people who need community improvements, and argue collectively that we don't want the money here, we want it there. And we're speaking for the majority of your district, and we're not just asking you to properly represent us. We're telling you that we will reward you if you do, and we will make your life hell if you don't. And be willing to sit there and not leave. And if they're still talking about this healthcare thing, do what Melida's doing and cough a lot while you're sitting there. And do things that get them thinking and laughing. Do street theater. Get them bad media. Protest them at public events. Question them with a video camera. Be the media, because there ain't no other media. And drop the idea that politeness is among our top 5 values here. They're killing people, right? You want ideas? Ask Carlos. He knows what he's doing. I was on this book tour months back on Martha's Vineyard and spoke with people who were there from Cape Cod and elsewhere about Delahunt, and they were calling him Delawon't and so on. And I, not that they hadn't done it before, but I told them to go and sit there and not leave. And they did, and they got a meeting, and they met with him and talked with him, and then he agreed to do a public forum on this topic, at which I hope he is properly confronted and compelled to stop putting his money where his mouth isn't, and vote no. And we have to stress to these people that we know an excuse when we see it, that we know a charade when they do one, and that we want them to stop voting the money for the wars, not put in a new resolution with lots of lovely language in it, not put in a new bill, not hold a public meeting, not be more accessible, not tell us what's in his heart of hearts, but stop voting the money.